Meet George. George is the kind of elderly man who walks a bit slower, but thinks a bit deeper. He's got a cap that's seen too many winters, shoes that have walked too many miles, and a heart that's been lonely for too many years. But despite all that, George has one thing that brings him joy. His dog, Max. Or, should I say, had. You see, Max is no ordinary dog. He's George's best friend, confidant, and his most loyal companion. A scruffy little mutt with a bark too big for his size and a tail that wagged like it was powered by 1,000 batteries. But one fateful day, Max was gone, vanished, into thin air. George looked everywhere, behind the bushes, under the park benches, even in the bakery where Max had maybe helped himself to one too many donuts. Nothing. No Max. For the first time in years, George walked those familiar streets alone, and let me tell you, it didn't feel the same without that familiar woof by his side. Now let's be honest here. George wasn't exactly what you'd call a high-tech guy. No smartphone, no fancy lost dog flyers with QR codes. Just an old man, his worn-out sneakers, and a hopeful heart. Every evening he'd shuffle down the same streets calling out, "Max! Max, boy!" And let's be real, his voice, not exactly ringing with confidence, more like a guy who's misplaced his glasses again. But this time, it was his best friend. Days passed. The once bustling sidewalks felt quieter. The familiar faces of the neighborhood smiled at George with sympathy, but none had seen Max. George was starting to feel the weight of those long days. He would sit on the park bench, watching other people walk their dogs, hoping, just hoping, that maybe by some miracle, Max would come running out of nowhere, tail wagging, like nothing ever happened. But no Max, just silence, and a lot of memories of the walks they used to share. Then one afternoon, something changed. George was making his slow journey down the street when a tiny voice called out to him, "Hey, mister, is this your dog?" George turned around, and there she was. A little girl with pigtails and a smile as bright as the sun, holding a leash. And at the end of that leash, Max, covered in mud, looking like he'd had the adventure of a lifetime, but still Max, his tail wagging faster than George's heart could take. Max bounded toward George like he'd just been gone for 5 minutes and not 5 days. And George? Well, he might have aged a decade looking for that dog, but in that moment, he felt 10 years younger. He laughed, wiping away a tear that he swore was just something in his eye. The little girl, bless her heart, had found Max wandering near the playground. And get this, she thought Max was lost because he was looking for her. George chuckled at the idea, patting Max's head, while the little girl beamed proudly. From that day on, George never walked alone again. Maxwell, he stuck to George's side a little closer, and the little girl, she'd wave every time they passed her house, her smile a constant reminder that even in the loneliest times, kindness can bring back the things we love most. Because sometimes all it takes is a little bit of hope and maybe a kind stranger to brighten even the darkest days.